But, you started just like any other band, and you were driving around in Trent's hatchback, opening for, other bands. Like, how was that in those early days?
Scary. And the band you're thinking of is Skinny Puppy. 1988 was when we did that in the hatchback up and down the East Coast. That particular tour, before there was ever a record deal or anything, was an opportunity. And at that point, we never even thought about a band, Trump was just working on songs, and so we put that whole live thing together in 4 days. Remember that? And the reel-to-reel, and then we had this giant reel-to-reel machine on stage as our playback machine. And I had to thread tape halfway through the show, and for the second reel. I mean, it was harrowing, but also super exciting, And then you start opening up for bands that that you just have loved your whole life, like Peter Murphy, Jesus and Mary Chain, and then next thing you know, you got people opening up for you.
I was finding my footing in those early days with Chris, pre-record. I'm glad everyone didn't have cell phones with cameras in their pockets, because it was pretty shitty, because we were winging it. We were trying to figure it out, And I think our winging it kind of lasted up into that first Lollapalooza date, where it dawned on me we were on a pro tour. This was in Phoenix. And, I remember seeing Living Colour with had road cases and perfectly wrapped snakes and road crew, just pro shit. And I looked down and I could see the blue guitar cable that my dad got me for my 15th birthday, still. And duct tape, junk equipment, and then our stuff melts on the first song and the first show of that tour. It was like, okay, we got to take it up a notch, professionalism. But our hearts were in the right place.
Was that the first show that happened, Arizona?
Yeah, the bed was shit on the first show.
That's so I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What just happened?
Well, we were officially the first casualty of the Lollapalooza tour here in Phoenix, Arizona. And I guess what happened is a lot of our equipment in the back was sitting in the sun for quite a long time, baking in the desert heat. And since we are an electronic-based kind of band, when the main part of your sound becomes ruined and melted, which I think is what happened, it was cutting out and just becoming a nightmare. And that complemented with incompetence on the crew part led to a disastrous, embarrassing situation. So, I mean, we want to really apologize to our fans in Phoenix. They came out to see us because we really wanted to do a good show. And it was a nightmare.
Did you actually stop right in the middle of a song? Or?
Oh, we had to. So, yeah, the second song, same thing happened, so it was time to cut our losses.
And then you fast forward to a performance like Woodstock in '94, which you're touring on this album, The Downward Spiral, which was this huge thing, and that was this huge performance. It's pay-per-view to literally, I think, 25 million homes, and yet that was still organic because you end up, it's famous because you're covered in mud. It was a mad show.
Because I remember that we were all muddy and freezing cold and stuff, and there was a gear problem, and we were running late, and we're standing up on the backstage area, on the stage, but like behind the gear, and it's like wind and it's freezing. Yeah. It was still not a problem, and then when it finally happened, and Larry Bud Melman said, "Punch your balls off" for 9 Inch Nails.
Ladies and gentlemen, punch your balls off, and please welcome 9 Inch Nails.
we got out there and it was an ice skating rink. It was just clear, and we didn't know it. I didn't know it until we got out there. And then I don't know, maybe the first or second song, Trent insisted, or probably still does, have these super heavy. In fact, Chris probably has a story about this. Heavy weighted microphone stand, and Trent throws it up in the air. And boom, it cuts the power all on my side of the stage, the right side of the stage. It was like the beginning of the set. So it's like all hell's breaking loose. We're falling and blah, blah, blah. And
it felt perfect being on stage. And yes, it was what we didn't know. It was slippery. It was super hard to play with mud covering in your eyes. It stung, and your fingers couldn't stay on the frets right. And there was shitloads of mistakes, but our hearts were in it, and it felt vital in the moment to me.
It was also the first time we were playing in front of a television camera crew.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
First row. A lot of people asked me about how many people were there and what was it like to stand in front of however many hundreds of thousands of people. But there was the camera crew, then there was a long lip of cable mess, and then there was another drop down from the stage wide enough to drive an ambulance through, and then the barricade, and then the first row of mud people, and then it just didn't stop. I had no clue the gravity or the relevance of that moment. I'm sure there was a conversation kind of leading to it, but after that conversation, there was no kind of internet to bolster and to kind of, pave the way for me to kind of imagine that. I
do remember after it was done, being like afraid for Trent to see it. Basically, I was like pretty new, and my mom had recorded it. Once again, like no internet and all that shit. So my mom recorded it down in Texas, and she like FedExed us the video the next day or whatever. And I don't know if you remember this, Trent, or not, but my mom sent it to us, and we watched it, and I was like knowing it wasn't going to be. And Trent was like, at the time, you were bummed about it, I think. And
at that time, I thought we did good.
That was my running. My opinion of the show is this: it was obviously fucking chaotic. You were going off. The fucking music was like sloppier than usual, I felt.
Yeah, that was one of the best shows I've ever done, personally. I connected. I said, fuck it, and I didn't get tired. And I broke everything I could, and that was insane for the show. So, fuck it. I felt like the weight had lifted off me. And I felt just relieved. But then I heard a tape, and it was awful.
But I watched it back recently, and to me, all the mistakes actually make it awesome. It seems violent and chaotic and awesome, but at the time it felt like I'm gonna get fired. Robin, I told him about your finger in that Madison Square Garden when we were going to the sound check. I think that's a cool story.
It was emotionally devastating to be canceling that Madison Square Garden show. First time we were ever kind of showing up there. And
explain what happened though. Like when we were
bus was coming to was nearing the hotel in Manhattan, and we were at a bunch of traffic lights, and the
gig
bus, our bus stopped short because another truck,
FedEx truck,
run a yellow light or something like this.
It was a FedEx truck,
and I wanted to be the first off the bus because I had friends and family that I wanted to be in contact with, and I had to like get into the building to use the telephone to communicate with them. And so I was standing at the junk bunk, the bunk, packing my day bag. And when the bus stopped short, I kind of was, went horizontal to the scene and barely got my hands up above my face before it hit the TV console or whatever behind the driver. And the bone popped off, and the nail flew up in slow motion and landed in Trent's mouth. And then we all turned screaming, louder than the next. But I kind of rushed to a hand guy, hand surgeon, who told me, yeah, you're not going to be playing tonight. And I was sure he didn't understand that we're very popular right now. And did you hear the part about Madison Square Garden? Of course, I'm going to be back there, anyway, it needed to be set with a pin. My hand was totally numb. And when I got back to the venue, to the garden, the opening groups had already played. The room was full, and they had brought me a guitar backstage. And for the very first time, I picked up a guitar pick and dropped my right hand below my heart, and the big light bulb of gauze started to seep crimson red, and it was.
It was this figure too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah! Sick motherfucker.
I'm 45. Probably being all right.
Fuck! Fucking FedEx idiot, huh?
Welcome to New York. It's split in a funny fucking way. The bone's chipped, and that's what poked the fingernail off.
To snap it back in place. You stick a needle in the palm of my hand. And a needle at a web.
So, his concern is A, I can't play at all, or B, if I start playing it, I'm gonna sin, and my finger's a bloody mess, and I can't feel it. That's not gonna make for a good show. So we need to think about what to do right now. Well, I was thinking, if it was halfway through the set, he can't go on. Tracy or somebody could play it. Today, the sound check proved that Tracy doesn't have stuff enough to play those parts. If we can't do it, we can't, fuck it. If I got my throat cut out, we wouldn't be playing the show either. So fuck it. There's no sense feeling shitty about it, because what can it doesn't change the truth of what the fuck happened, so fuck it.
Please get the marquee outside doing first. It says the show has been canceled.
Then let's get a straight story for the press, so it's not turned into what it isn't. I think it should be the truth.
Absolutely.
He got the end of his fucking finger cut off.
That's absolutely.
He tried to do the show and passed out backstage, and we can't fucking.
That's fine. I just need to hear it one more time.
Well, there's nothing like a nice stressful day.
And Trent, we were all there and saw the thing happen, and it was understood that we weren't there to go out, kind of limping out there. And so Trent made the call, cancel it. We got to be firing on all pistons if we're coming out here, And I just kind of collapsed on the couch, and then just tried to check out. I was so upset, and I could just hear the rush of CB radios, and U2 had just arrived, and talking about how they're going to make the call and how they're going to band out before or after the announcement, and it was hard. And later I had learned that my uncle, who was in the audience, again before cell phones, and was shuffling shoulder to shoulder with everybody else who was exiting the building, overheard someone who heard on the radio that the show was canceled because the guitar player got his hand chopped off. And so, that got back to my mom. It took like a day to talk to her, and then it was a bad scene.
Chris had to announce it too.
I thought I was going to get murdered up there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was not fun. That's my least favorite being on stage story, is having to tell a full Madison Square Garden, sorry, we can't play. It's like, damn.
I have a question for Trent.
Yes, Denny?
Was it weird singing Hurt with Bowie before Johnny Cash and all that stuff?
Tell you what, it was one of the most awesome moments of my life. And that was one of those times where the Bowie tour came at the end of the Downward Spiral 2.5-year run of shows, where life had significantly changed and gotten stranger and more surreal. And when we started that tour playing theaters, we had to cancel those shows to book up to arenas and multiple nights. And all of that happened without really a lot of time to hit the pause button and kind of understand what was happening and recognize it. And finishing that tour, leading to the Bowie tour, when I get a phone call from Bowie saying, you know, I made this strange album and we really want your band to go on tour with us. This is my hero, you know. And like, as you mentioned, Danny, getting to meet him and get to know him, befriend him, and find out he's actually lived up to being as cool as you've projected him to be, and in ways you hadn't expected. And to be on stage with a song that means a lot, something very intimate to you, which Hurt does, you know, and then to hear that voice that you've listened to so many times, you know, singing it with you. That would be a moment on stage where I go, I can't believe this is even happening. And this is, I've never dreamed. Wow, man, am I lucky. You know, so yeah, felt cool.
It was a cool version too that they did.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to put in the movies for the star. They think, come on, you're the cameraman. Is this
Where's catering at? Brad Pitt.
Fucking Pitt.
He hates that, by the way.
If he could read well enough to read a script, he may do okay.
Oh, Danny, get back in here! Defend yourself.
So I do that.
It would make it a bit more interesting too, with seeing outside.
And then it's something that we can't foresee happens on these two shows. We do have Portland in reserve, just in case. Yeah?
Yep.
Well, what I was going to do, I was going to cover most of your songs before Morrissey happened. I was coming out doing like an acoustic thing. A middle-aged, more gentle approach to the industrial chaos.
I'm touched by that.
God thinks he's all that and a bag of chips. That was my street version. Some kids the other night said that I was doing with Under Pressure. So why is he doing Vanilla Ice covers? Can't see they forget. That's something at 1968. That's the year some of their parents were born.
Is that what year that was written?
Yeah.
I was 1.
Somebody's showing off in front of me.
I'm just trying to put that in perspective. Too much fucking perspective.
Kids are such agists. Yeah, I know. I think it'd be all right. All right. See you later. Yeah.
Chris probably has a story about this microphone stand.
I was on stage and a mic stand flew out of my hand. Well, this mic stand flew and accidentally hit him on the head and cut his head open. But he kept on playing, which I thought was pretty impressive. It wasn't meant to do that. It's like combat, you know, when you go on stage, something else takes over, and once in a while, things happen.
I wanted to rewind to the actual, making the Downward Spiral. because that is this defining record and this defining moment. And I was reminded, I was watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood back when we could watch films in cinemas, and was reminded of where that album was recorded. And I'm just wondering if you knew that was special at the time, what you were creating. And maybe this is one for Chris or Trent.
I knew it. That was an experience like anything else, like living in that house we were there almost 2 years, I think. They finally threw us out because we were running late and we were going month to month. And then finally the landlord's like, you got to go. And we stood in the I'll back up, but we stood in the driveway and there was a bulldozer. And we're like, the minute the last box was out of the house, bulldozer just right through and demolished the whole Tate house. Like just gone now. Obviously it was gone when we watched it get demolished. It was really bizarre. But being there and everything was, people always ask, was it scary? Was it haunted, creepy, and all that? But those questions have been answered a million times over. But just something about the whole experience of being there and doing it and the time of it. And it was actually fun. Like every day was fun. And it was just another adventure that happened up there. So it was one of those things where it wasn't like where you had booked the recording studio, you got so many days, and you got noon to midnight, you got your 12-hour walkout session. It was, you could kind of work whenever you wanted, and we'd have people up all the time, and it was just a fun time. We lost several. What?
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say we lost several days playing Wolfenstein: Spear of Destiny on an old PC. That was the game du jour back then. I mean, so it was kind of, it was just one of those weird times where it was super creative. It was like probably the most creative time because everything was just everything was right there, and it flood came over and for quite a while. It was just one of those things that, I mean, I'll never forget it.
Did you get scared at all? No scared moments? Do you remember the time I had a scared moment there? And I'll quit talking so much in a second, but I'm like, how the fuck do you get scared? But we went to see Depeche Mode and at the Forum, and after the show we hung out at their hotel. They had like a party or whatever, and I remember Chris and I we left early and Trent stayed there. It was the three of us that went, and Trent stayed at that thing and hung out with the band or whatever, I think. And anyway, we went back, and I barely knew these dudes at that time. And I was staying in the main house. Chris stayed in the guest house, which you can get killed in the guest house too, from what I heard. But he was in the guest house. And so I don't know that house at all. Trent's not even there, and I'm sleeping. I'm trying to go to sleep. And they got these old school phones that have they have little cubes with lights when someone, mini lines or whatever. And I didn't know shit about the phones or whatever. And so I'm like laying there. I'm excited because I'm trying to basically auditioning for the band, and I'm trying to fall asleep. And I just saw Depeche Mode, one of my favorites of all time. And congrats to them, by the way. And anyway, so I'm trying to go to sleep, and then all of a sudden the light comes on, and on the phone right next to me, I'm like, fuck, someone's in the house. And I'm like, I know, because like Spin Magazine and shit, people knew what was going on in there. I'm like, oh no, they're gonna think I'm Trent. They're gonna kill me. And I was like, but the light, like I said, the light came on the phone. I have no idea. So I thought for sure someone's in the house on the phone. And I was so worked up and I don't know how this can happen. I got so traumatized and worked up that eventually I just scared myself to sleep. And I woke up in the morning and it was all good. And then come to find out, I saw Chris the next day, and he's like, oh, I told him what happened. He's like, no, dude, the phone in the back house is also connected. And I came back to talk to my girlfriend on the phone, and I sat on the phone with her for all night or whatever. I'm like, so anyway, now shut up. That place was scary.
I think about some of the material you've put out over the years, whether it's, music videos pushing the boundaries on MTV, what you were pulling off, throughout those since you started till now, really. But, when you look at pushing the boundaries, is there any particular thing you're particularly proud of, Trent, about what, because you weren't taking a safe route with this band?
I mean, I can look back with clarity, or I can, retell the story the way I choose to remember it. But in general, I think because the project started off placing integrity and vision first and success secondary, it was going to happen or it wasn't going to happen. It set a blueprint that allowed the focus to always be just try to do the best thing you can, not try to sell the most records. And again, this is looking at an early 90s kind of mindset where it was different than it is now. Feels like the climate was different. But I looked at it as if I have the opportunity to push myself as far as I can, or try to make something that excites me to the fullest degree, I hope there's an audience that will follow me down that path, but they might not. And I'm talking about Downward Spiral. It was a really fertile time when we wrote that record. We had the experience of Pretty Hate Machine and Broken. We had a couple years touring under our belts. We finally had some money to invest in equipment. We were living in a studio, essentially. A lot of ideas about what we wanted to pull off. And it felt like a good time to really push oneself. And it wasn't, how can we take these million or so records we sold and quadruple it? It was, how can we now that we have a label behind us that will let us do what we want, and we have a little bit of confidence, let's really try to push the envelope into what we've always wanted to make. Now we kind of might know how to do that. And when I turned in Downward Spiral, I was extremely proud of it, but I was sure it was going to be the end of any commercial success, because it didn't feel to me like a record that sounded like anything else, and there wasn't any singles, in my opinion, and the fact that it found its audience, I'm proud of that. It kind of set the tone that stick to your guns, do what's right, and I'm proud that we were able to never feel like compromise, in the scope of things. You're faced with endless decisions. Playing Woodstock was a decision. It felt kind of like a sellout at the time. We'll pay you a lot of money to be on this potentially corny, nostalgia trip of Pepsi-sponsored Woodstock, the antithesis of what it might have meant back in the 60s. That one show, though, paid for elaborate production through the rest of the tour. Well, fuck it, let's try our best. And it winds up being what it was. But sticking to your guns is the short answer.
And making the most catchy song put fuck in the chorus.
I was just gonna say, so working on the record, Flood's over there, and Trent comes out in the morning. We were making coffee. We had the coffee going in the kitchen, and Trent's like, "I got the lyrics," because Closer, the music was already there, and it was like, "That's the single. Like that is going to be the single." Trent starts reading, and he's like, "I got the lyrics done last night." We're like, "Cool, let's hear them." Trent gets to the chorus, and just Flood and I look at each other like, well, that ain't a single anymore, man. That one's gone. He just he just took the most pop thing that's been written so far and just shot it right in the face. And I just remember thinking like, oh man, but but look at it now, right? Who's laughing now? But I remember that clearly. God, it was like one of those things that were like, oh Jesus.
The guy had the headphones, right? Right.
Robin, is that a knife in your hands? What you've had this thing in your hands for the whole thing? What is it? A knife?
Yeah,
Is it?